That's my freedom bell that I got at the Colorado Center for the Blind, because I got the training at the National Federation of the Blind philosophy back in
1800.
Not 1800, Kevin. 1992. So, welcome
1942.
Yeah, thanks, Jess. I appreciate it. That's nice. Well, welcome, everybody. We're coming to the week, the end of week 10. We have a few changes. We had talked on these calls about a few of the things coming up next week. We've actually had some changes. I think you'll want to spread the word. No Mountain Time 5 on Monday, Memorial Day. And then at Tuesday, we're going to have John Perret and folks from his shop talk about the fact that the legislature in DC going back to session. What are we doing about COVID-related legislation for blind people and AATA? And he has a lot of information about the financial aspects that blind people, we want to make sure everybody understands and get to. So John Perret is Tuesday night. Today we're going to talk a focus group about the philosophy of the next employment opportunities and what that's going to look like for blind people. But first, Jessica Beaton.
All right. So in addition to having John Perret next week, we're also going to be having a great workout Wednesday. On Thursday, we're going to introduce our National Federation of the Blind of Colorado scholarship class, which they don't even all know who they are yet. So I can't tell you who will be on the call, but I can tell you that we have a really fantastic, I can't tell you that either, but I can tell you that we have a really fantastic group of scholarship winners this year from Colorado, and we're very excited to introduce them. We'll have a wonderful Philosophy Friday. And so again, our notes will not go out, our call list will not go out on the David Andrews national list. It will be going out on Colorado Talk. So if you'd like to get our correspondence about our weekly calls, you can sign up for Colorado Talk at www.nfbnet.org, or you can look on our NFBCO Colorado Facebook, or send an email to assistance@nfbco.org, and we'll be sure to send you the list of calls. Or call topics.
Okay, Maureen.
Awesome. So another reminder, like I do every night, of our phone number and email. So if you have any questions about COVID-19 or about becoming a member of the National Federation of the Blind, or if you have had any difficulty in a ride share like Uber or Lyft because of your guide dog, please call 303-778-1130 extension 219, or send an email to assistance@nfbco.org, and we will get back to you as soon as we can. Another reminder to check out the Breaking Blind podcast and get the basics of cane travel down from an expert, David Neatfelt. And I hope everyone has a great holiday weekend.
Yeah, me too.
So Scott, we're going to bring you into this discussion as we lean forward and scheme forward a little about employment. But first, as our state president, do you have a comment or three?
No, I think everybody has covered the waterfront.
Great. Okay, I want to remind folks too, National Federation of the Blind of Colorado channel on YouTube is where you can get many of these recordings. Folks have already sent me an email about yesterday's great program. It is not up yet, but it will be up over the weekend or at some point soon, Kev?
Yep.
Okay, good. So if you want to revisit that interview from yesterday, as well as Scott's, where Scott talks about some of the great adventures he's had in and out of the National Federation of the Blind. So I think you'll enjoy that. One of the more, those are two very enjoyable, I think, Mountain Time at 5s that we have. Okay, so this is going to be a good time for questions and answers and discussion. The Philosophy Friday this week is focusing on the future of employment for blind people. Now, two things. President Riccobono has appointed a national committee that is doing some exploration and research about the future of employment for blind people. And it so happens that Scott and I are on that committee with Neil Lewis, Mark Maurer, There's a couple of attorneys. There are some women on this list, not just the old white guys. Well, I guess Anil's not a white guy. But at any rate, so
No,
we are.
but he is old.
He is old, yeah, and a guy. But we are certainly
Far from white.
yeah. So we certainly are working on this. And Colorado, our affiliate, has had a committee working on these issues for about 3 or 4 years, which is Julie Deeden and some staff are on there, because we know even before COVID-19 that AI, artificial intelligence, automation, the whole balance of trade, so many things are going to impact employment for everyone, whether you're blind or sighted. The world of work is going to change dramatically. And now that you have COVID-19, you're seeing on Facebook and you're seeing articles that say, hey, there's going to be more and more virtual work. Okay, we're going to have to mute someone here. Whoever's making the noise, you're going to mute him, Kev. Thanks. Because they're working from home, see, so it's hard. It's always hard to have a good background sometimes. You got so much going on in our lives. But more and more virtual work will probably be the thing. Will that be good for blind people or bad for blind people? And how are we going to forge our future and lead the way? Do we want cottage industries like we used to have, where we made brooms or baskets or did massage? What will the employment world look like, and how do we harness it? So I'm going to stop there and see if Scott, who's been on some of these committees, would have any comments, and then I want to open this up completely and totally for ideas, questions, and feedback, because this is your call, our call, philosophy. Scott? Unmute Scott. Scott might have been, huh? It's what?
That's him.
Okay, he might have had to step away. Whatever. I don't know. So let's see if other folks have comments or questions regarding this topic. We're just going to throw it open. If you have observations or ideas, just raise your hand. Kev, how do they do that?
On the dial-in, it's *9, and on the app, it's under the More section or the Participants, and then Alt-Y. There's Scott.
Yeah, there you go. You
Sorry.
called away and you made it back. So what we said, and by the way, we still have to get to Eileen. Did they do? Oh, we didn't get to Eileen and Mary Ann.
No.
We're so unorganized today. So we'll take a break in a minute and get to Eileen and Mary Ann, because they're doing cool stuff this weekend that we want to be sure to promote to everyone. Scott, we were just started to talk about the work we have begun to do to shape employment opportunities for blind people.
Right. And I had to mute myself, and then I couldn't unmute myself. So, but I agree with you. The world was already changing, and I think in dramatic ways. And the pandemic is only accelerating that rate of change. And the world will do a lot more virtually. We'll do more and more and more with technology. So what we can do to increase our footprint in those areas and take advantage of those opportunities is going to determine whether we have a bright employment future or not. I think this is an opportunity. I also think it could be a liability.
Yeah. Now, feedback from our colleagues. Anybody that we're going to take a couple of ideas from the unmutants. If anyone wants to raise their hand, Kev can recognize them. Jessica Beecham.
I just want to say, I think as an organization, one of the very, very most important things that we can focus on at this time is web and application accessibility. I heard someone say one time that really website access, mobile application access is the new wheelchair ramp. If we don't have it, we lose access to all of those spaces. We lose access to work in those fields. We lose so much. And so I think that just in general, I know we already do put a great deal of focus in that area, but I think if we're going to really think about a place where our focus needs to be place to be really impactful, that's going to be a real leader.
And I think that's immediate. I think that's urgent. You know, some of the stuff that I'm talking about is a little down the line. We'll talk about some of that in a little while, but some of the stuff I've been researching and dreaming about is down the line, but we're not going to get there unless we have that on-ramp to technology without a lot of workarounds. You know, Mike spent time yesterday talking about the workarounds that he dreams up and that he does. Well, that's great for Mike May, an inventor, a technologist. For a lot of us, we just want to be able to work or date or get our groceries delivered. You know, we don't want to have to spend a lot of time. So I agree with you. Although the National Federation of the Blind is working hard on these issues, I think a greater emphasis on really pushing that makes a lot of sense, Jess. Okay, let's take a few.
We got phone number ending in 6037.
Hi there.
That's me, Karen Samuelson.
Yeah.
I have a concern that we could talk about during the session is that, you know, the unemployment rate for everybody has gone up so high. When things open up and people can get jobs, we'll be competing against a ton of other people, way more than before, because people will be trying to go back to work. That's something we could talk about.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right. And that's part of the reason why we're really kind of refocusing and relaunching what we have been talking about, the future of employment, whether that's entrepreneurship. What does that look like? Is it in the service industry? What does it look like? And exactly, when you've got 36 million Americans out of work, and we know that some of these corporations are not going to bring people back. Once they've figured out to do it with less labor, trust me, the plutocracy is not going to bring people back. And small businesses are going to go out of business. So how do they bring people back? So you're right, Karen, a whole bunch of people clamoring for employment opportunities.
Well, and even, quite frankly, large businesses going out of business because they can do just as much business online.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
I saw Bath and Body Works, Victoria's Secret. There's a ton of brick and mortar stores that are just going to go ahead and close because they haven't found their business to be impacting enough to offset the costs that it takes them to run those brick and mortar locations.
Right. So again, like Scott said, and like a lot of us saying, the changes, they were already in progress, right? It's just accelerated. You think about, I loved it. By the way, Biden said today that Amazon should start paying taxes, but that's a political discussion we're not going to get into. So that's a good point, Karen. Other comments?
iPhone Sherry.
Sherry?
You can unmute there. All right.
I'm sorry, I'm here.
You're good. Go ahead.
The gentleman said something about with the pandemic. There's a he said something like, God, I can't get this out of my face.
That's all right. Don't worry. Don't worry about it.
He said there's a positive and a negative. So what exactly was he what was he saying? You know, this is before the last woman had began to speak.
Sure.
I think a lot about being blind is about being organized and being resourceful. You know, so what exactly did he mean?
Yeah. And by the way, you got it out just fine. Thank you. I think there are going to be positives and negatives for those of us who realize, well, my good friend Jim Gashel puts it this way: in any kind of an emergency or crisis, and he doesn't mean this in a mean way, but there will be winners and there will be losers. And to the extent that we can be organized, as you say, adventurous, flexible, use all of our resources, our training centers, the rehab system, the National Federation of the Blind, our colleagues and buddies, we're just going to have to claw our way back into employment in one way or another. So I think that's really well said. Can we, before I forget, we'll take a little break and see if Marianne or Eileen, I know they have big stuff this weekend. I want to make sure we don't forget to promote some of the fun stuff we're doing, not just getting everybody jobs. Eileen or Marianne, if you guys want to talk about your cool party stuff.
Marianne.
I do want to talk about that, and then later on I do actually have my hand up for the discussion as well.
All right.
I will talk easily about Sunday first.
Please.
We are hosting a Sunday afternoon improv. Whether it's your first time acting ever or just your first time on Sunday, plan to come and join us from 1 to 3 p.m. Mountain Time. We do have Zoom links that are out on Colorado Talk. There's a connection also now to the the NFB of Colorado Facebook and lots of other places. If you cannot find us, please shoot out an email to assistance@nfbco.org, and I'm sure folks will send that information along. Come and join us. We're going to have an absolute blast.
All right, Marianne, go ahead and stay unmuted. Thank you for that, and it's going to be fun. I look forward to it. Stay unmuted there, Marianne. I'm going to get Eileen in, and then I'm going to come back to you for your hand up. Eileen, are you with us?
Unmute, Eileen.
Unloon mining.
There she is.
Hi guys. So I am Eileen, aka Sweet G, and will be the MC, one of the MCs at our open mic night. I did leave the Zoom information in the chat. We'll be having poetry, singers, comedy, and of course all of my little corny jokes. And Scott, if you're there, I am learning how to yodel just for you. And so the joke I have today is, do you know how to make antifreeze?
How do you make antifreeze?
You take her blanket.
Now that's the kind of stuff that Jessica Beecham will tell. You're right about corniness. All right, thank you, Eileen. I look forward to, you're going to be starting up at 6:30 tomorrow night for the great get. What time are you going to open up the lines?
I will have it opened at 6:15 for some chat.
Okay.
Everybody can, well, actually it'll be open before that. Just if you do come in and people are rehearsing or getting things together, just kind of don't really say anything. At 6:15, we'll have just some time for everybody to chat. And then if we get done early, we'll also leave it open until 8:30 so people can just get to know each other, and everyone's welcome.
Good, family friendly, and they're not even charging anything. You guys are great. That's the Wild West chapter of the National.
This is how we're doing our meetup. We thought we'd meet up on Zoom and just show off some talent. And yesterday at the rehearsal, we have some amazingly talented people coming up.
Fabulous. Thanks, Eileen. Now let's go back real quick to Marianne, because she does a lot of thinking about, Marianne has been a blind vendor. She's been a customer service agent. She's been a manager. She's done all kinds of things. And so, Marianne, what are your comments regarding the whole future of employment?
Well, I have two that I think are really important for anybody who's considering going into an industry that's going to involve online trainings and so on and so forth, and all of these quote unquote online corporate university type trainings. Almost everyone that I've ever looked at is inaccessible. So that's going to put our blind people in the back, whether we want it or not. Because if you're not there in person, like when I did all of my hotel training, I had to do everything in person because all of the quote unquote Hilton University stuff was inaccessible. And a lot of those training module type things come out of these corporate training structures that are out there to train for millions of corporations all over the world, and they're not accessible, and they know they're not accessible, but we have not tackled that as the NFB, and we really, really need to look at that, because if people are going to be working virtually, they're going to be expected to take their trainings virtually, and our blind folks are not going to be able to compete on terms of equality.
Now,
the other thing.
So let me just pop in there real quick and say that's why Jessica was making it the new sort of the wheelchair ramp for blind people. You're right. We got to tackle it, and we will. Second point.
The second point I have is that it is not enough to have an entry-level position be the only one that is accessible. And there's too many companies out there that are going to provide, yes, okay, we can hire people with disabilities, we can hire your blind folks, and we're going to be able to do the first level position and then nothing else.
Yeah.
And we need to, as an organization, step that expectation up.
Right.
and make companies aware that we are not just entry-level employees.
I agree. And to that point, Christian Koresh, the executive director of the Division of Vocational Rehabilitation, posted an interesting article that she wrote on LinkedIn. So if you're on LinkedIn, you might look at that, the director of DVR, Christian Koresh. Okay, thank you. You're absolutely right. Other comments?
Maureen.
Okay, Maureen.
Hi. So something I, had just been thinking about is, like Jessica mentioned, there's a lot of barriers around technology, and there are, of course, barriers with accessibility, but there's also just barriers of people not knowing how to use screen readers, not knowing how to use their phones, and just the lack of, education around screen readers and things like that around technology. And I wonder, if now is really the time that people need to jump on getting good training with technology so that they can get virtual jobs. And I was thinking also that we have so many people among us that are super talented in technology, and what an opportunity to start a business doing tech training and providing virtual training.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. Technology has to be number one, because I'm telling you, I read these journals and I read these books and I study employment. It's been a hobby of mine ever since nobody would hire me in the 1980s. I decided, well, let's learn how to tackle this. And so right now, this whole, our Colorado Center, I would suggest we need to beef up our tech training. I think we're doing great, but this is a new era. So all of our centers, we have to beef it up so that we will be in position. It doesn't really matter if the corporations make it accessible as hell if we don't know how to use it, right? And some of us do and some of us don't. So Maureen, I totally agree with that. Take a couple other comments.
Scott.
Scott's back.
I am back. I raised my hand, so thank you for recognizing me, Kevin. And by the way, I come across my screen that Jim Gashel has joined us. So I'm sure he will have some thoughts on this. But the question we have to answer is, what jobs will be remaining as we go through this transition? I am convinced that the jobs that relate to, manufacturing, that relate to anything of that nature are going to become more and more scarce, and thus more and more difficult for us to even compete for. Automation is going to take a lot of those jobs. There's just absolutely no question in my mind about that. And so, we see it now. You look even in places like the Amazon warehouses, the more and more the goods are being moved around and brought out to the shipping dock by robots. And so what we need to do is figure out what are the jobs that are going to be left. And I think the broad categories are service industry kind of jobs, whether that be customer service or other kinds of service jobs. You need the technology infrastructure jobs, the programmers, the people who keep the networks going, all of those kinds of people. Then, of course, still the professions. There will be need for lawyers. There will be need for financial professionals, and so on. And another thing I do want to put under sort of the service industry category is food service. People will still, obviously want to eat and have their ability to, once we get a vaccine anyway, go out to restaurants and get whatever they need in the whole food world. So what can we do to capitalize?
First of all, I want to take issue with you a little bit. I think the service sector, in terms of restaurants and that kind of thing, is going to be significantly curtailed. You take a look at what some of the demographers are saying now, and they're saying, depending on how long COVID goes, there are even people in the restaurant business who are saying, hey, this doesn't work, because the people who are waiting on you and me are people who are being essentially exploited by the Red Lobsters. They're making nothing. Why should they? No health care, right? So are those jobs gonna be left? And how many of them?
Yeah, or a lot less. I mean, even if you look at before COVID, if you go into the Baltimore airport,
yep,
everything is ordered through a kiosk. Even at their sit-down restaurants, you never have contact with a human person except when they're bringing you out your dish.
Yeah. So
well, what I'm not disagreeing with you, but what I am saying is whether the food service is being provided through kiosk or even little robots who come out and bring your entrees, that there's still going to be the need for food service and restaurants, and all of that will still be there. So how do we capitalize on that? And I guess where I was headed with this is we have to be able to train as many of our people to be the entrepreneurs, the ones who run the businesses, who provide these various kinds of services.
Right.
And we need, and for example, I mean, you know, there a lot of companies contract out their customer service. And the reason that we can't get a lot of those jobs is because the software used is inaccessible. So we have to build our own customer service companies and you know, build the accessible software that we need. So we just have to start thinking in ways that we really haven't before.
Yeah, and I think we're getting to that. I actually don't want to be in customer service, because those are, again, like the cooks and the dishwashers, those are the exploited, in my opinion. I think we need to be thinking about being the entrepreneurs. I think we need to realize that the landscape is going to so totally change that what we're talking about today doesn't even almost resonate. And so what are the future? See, I feel like is it possible that what is old can be new again? You know, we blind people, maybe we need to get into cottage industries. Maybe we fix the NIB formula. Hi, Jim Gashel. You know, maybe we have co-ops where blind people work together to become bakers. And because when we go back and compete with 36 million Americans, with a shrinking labor economy, with a shrinking service sector where robots may be doing this or that, we are going to have to find a key that keeps us in, lets us back in. So that's sort of where I'm coming from. Who else do we have? Jess, did you have something?
I was just going to say, I think, you know, in line with what you're saying, just artisan crafts and foods are always, no matter how big and robotic business is, there's always a sentimentality and a desire for artisan crafted items.
I would also throw personal services in there. The people who do massage therapy, wellness coaching. I've noticed some of our colleagues getting into that and doing pretty well, because people, let me recommend a book, by the way, that was recommended to me by Mark Maurer, and Scott, I think, got a note about it. World Without Work. It's by Daniel Susskind. It's called A World Without Work. And he's a British writer, provocateur, inventor, and he has a great, so in other words, part of his thought is, okay, 20 years from now, what do we do if there's not much work? How do we remain engaged, and how do we remain happy and productive? What will make us productive? Do we go to the arts? Do we all play music on the corner? What strengths of society, if there's no tables to wait on, what does that look like? So these are pretty serious and provocative comments.
And I agree with that. I mean, because so many jobs will be performed by automation, by robots. Artificial intelligence will control a lot. So what will people be doing?
Yeah, it's interesting. So what some of the authors are saying, so what we're going to have to be good at doing as a society is finding self-worth from other activities. We're no longer going to be putting a widget on a sprocket or 9 hours a day. So how do we find our self-worth? And what's that going to look like? And how do you generate income if all you're doing is working on your own self-worth? If you're working on your own Maslow hierarchy, how do you put, where's the tax base going to come from? All of those complicated issues that we're starting to think about. Other comments?
Kasahun?
Yes, hi. Before I make my point regarding the philosophical idea of what the future would be for the blind, I just want to agree with one of the participants who made a point that blind people have to start to worry about the online education, the accessibility issue. I think that's very important because I myself am doing my class online now, so I can see how important that part of the process is. I think it's a good point that we have to start to worry about the accessibility of the distance education or online, because we have to focus on that too. But coming back to
before you make that point, hold on a second. I should say the good thing is that the National Federation of the Blind and other players in this field have been obviously concerned about it, working on it, filing litigation, working with our educators to make that happen. But I think what we're saying is we're going to have to step it up to the next level. I think that's probably what you're saying as well. We're just going to have to get double serious. Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah.
Yes, perfect. And I also understand that there is a legislation, I think, which is already underway, right? When it comes to the higher education or whatever.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's what I mean. So we have to give it a push and focus more on it. That's what I want to say. Coming to the issue at hand, the future of the blind. From employment point of view, I have a bit different view on that point. I think we should ask what is basically the problem of employment when it comes to the blind. Is it really something that has to do with a particular crisis or a seasonal or something? I wonder, the problem lies somewhere. I mean, there's a general chronic problem, societal problem. It's not because the blind don't have the capacity to be engaged in any field that they have been unemployed. It's rather because of the social prejudice and whatever. It has its origin in the cultural part of it. So and culture has little about season or crisis or something. So I just want to bring to the discussion that whatever, it's a good idea to worry about what may come after 20 years in terms of this season, but I think we have to stress the fact that we have to focus on the general problem that the blind are unemployed because of the general societal problem, because of the policy perspective, because of the deep-rooted social challenges. So that's what I don't know if I have made my point clear, but that's the way I say it. Thank you.
You made it very well, and it's you really, maybe without knowing it, or maybe you have read the literature and studied with us, but it's the same point that we've been making for 80 years. It's not the blindness, it's not the lack of eyesight, principally. It is society's judgment that we are not quite capable. We don't fit in, and they have all these myths and misconceptions about us, and that's not gonna change on its own. Again, that's part of what we do in the National Federation of the Blind. That's why we are a social action movement, a civil rights organization first and foremost. And so, well said. Yeah, you're absolutely right. That's absolutely right. Who else wants in? Good job. Thank you very much for that.
Phone number ending in 4299.
Hi, this is Michael Smith from Phoenix, Arizona. Can you guys hear me?
We can, Michael. Go ahead.
Okay, so I like all the points that everybody was making here. However, I'd like to kind of bring attention, and this is my question, and this is stuff I've been hearing from other blind people too. And I feel that when it comes to the future, yes, while everybody and all the businesses and jobs are going to go towards technology, because we'll definitely see that, but I wonder if everything is going to go to technology, are we going to lose, for the blind specifically, what happens to that social interaction that we're all used to? Do we lose that, or do we find a way? I know the blind is used to adapting and stuff like that, but the one thing I'd hate to see is just for all blind people to be like it was before the National Federation of the Blind, where you were just stuck in your house all day doing nothing. I mean, the training centers and stuff give us a great opportunity for us to hang out and to, talk to each other and interact and go meet up and stuff like that. And if everything is going the way of technology, do we lose that? Or is that, that's my question.
It's a very good point, and I don't know that we all have the answers. It's kind of interesting. We certainly, I mean, that moves away from employment a little bit, to the extent that some people handle this virtual world. Let's talk about blind people. Some blind people handle this virtual world very well and are pretty okay not having a lot of physical distancing. But then a lot of blind people, just like sighted people, like, hey, I got to get out there. I gotta be around people. I need the hubbub. I need the excitement. I need the interaction. I happen to be one of the people who, fortunately, as an entrepreneur, the kind of job I have, I work from the office. And to be honest with you, this won't be a popular opinion, I don't think, but I'm kind of happy not having to take an Uber downtown and go to a meeting with the Chamber of Commerce with 49 people on my subcommittee who, even though I've known them for a decade, will stand there and raise their hand when I'm chairing a meeting, waving it around, still not knowing that I can't call on you unless you say your name. I'm happy not to expend that social energy on interaction with sighted people. Now, that could be viewed as a cop-out, and if it is, it is, but these are interesting questions, Mike, and I appreciate you raising them. Comments about anything, not just what I said. That's probably not all that pithy.
Phone number ending in 9282.
9282, who are you?
Hey, my name is Laura. I'm
Hi, Laura.
calling from Virginia, so I'm on the other side of the land here.
Are you Northern Virginia or Southern Virginia?
Central Virginia.
Okay, go ahead.
Oh, and I'm interested in signing up for the open mic, so I'm going to check that out.
Great.
But I wanted to speak to the part about there was a gentleman who was talking about social biases toward people with blindness, and I certainly have experienced that. I think that a lot of that has to do with fear on two levels. Number one, I think that there are people that are afraid of the idea of being blind themselves and what that would mean to them in their life.
Okay.
And so they fear it and want to stay away. And I think the other thing is, for whatever reason, they do view blind people as kind of different. So, and they don't know how to approach it. And kind of what you were just saying, because I experienced that too, is somebody will go in. Now, just to be clear, I'm legally blind, so I do have sight, but I do have a fair amount of blindness. So somebody steps into my sighted or my blind spot, one of them, raises their hand or steps beside me on a side I can't see them and expects me to see them and acknowledge them, and then makes a comment to me, "What's wrong with you? Didn't you see me?" It's like, no, I didn't, and you know I'm blind. It's really difficult to navigate those things. But I do think that a lot of that has to do with a basis in fear, and I think part of the way to alleviate that is through education. and being your own advocate and saying, listen, I can't see in that area, just so you're aware, just to let me remind you. I don't know. In some ways, I don't think it's right for us to take on somebody else's fear, but I do think that it is proper for us to self-advocate and to remind people that we are blind. And I would agree with whoever said also, we shouldn't have to be put in a position where we have to continually remind somebody that we're blind. I mean, unfortunately, these are issues that we have to face, but they shouldn't be our problem. And I don't have a good answer myself, but I just wanted to put that out there.
And I love that. Yeah, I think that's right. When I was young, 2 generations ago, I guess, I would say that fear of blindness, catching blindness, I think that was very real, especially in rural areas. I don't sense, and your experience is, everybody's experience is different. I don't sense that people are afraid of it anymore as much as afraid that they will offend, or afraid that you need help, or, people are always leery of things that are different. We all are. We're all leery. When I first met Kevin Kovac, Kovac's over here is in a wheelchair, and I never really knew too many people in a wheelchair. And I remember thinking, in fact, Kevin Jess will tell you, is it okay if I ask you about this? And then I would bite my tongue and say, dude, you're doing the same thing that sighted people do about blind people. So then I stopped doing it and just let him go down the ramp. And if he made it, he made it. Anyway, so people fear what they don't understand. And this is back to employment, because we're going to have to change society's attitudes. And so you're right, it's tough. And I also think as you get older, some of that stuff bounces off your back. Although after pandemic, I told someone the other day, if you come up and touch me 3 months ago, I was just annoyed. Well, now I'm angry. It's dangerous. You cannot put your hands on me anymore. All right, so we're going all over the place here. Other comments or questions about anything that anybody has said?
Sheila Leegland.
Hi, Sheila.
Hi, how are you?
We're excellent and exceptional here in the bunker. Go ahead.
Okay, what I've been thinking about was, in the last few years, probably since about 2014, my husband and I have been talking about the future of unemployment, but we've also been talking about how we are going to have to go about things differently, because we are in order of selection with Voc Rehab. And we will be in order of selection for God only knows how many years to come. Mm-hmm. So because of that, mm-hmm. there are virtually no resources out there that have any money to prioritize so that blind people can actually find work mm-hmm. through the rehab system. Mm-hmm. So in my mind, we are going to have to, as blind people, be much, much more involved in doing the actual training of people mm-hmm. ourselves, mm-hmm. the actual working with people on how to use the technology. We as an organization, as in the National Federation of the Blind, I'm not encouraging that we become like a total rehab agency, but we're going to have to look more and more at this, because with the COVID, especially now, Montana's going to be hit very hard budget-wise, and we're going to be lucky if our funding isn't cut even worse than it is.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right, and you have touched on a point that others have made. Maureen made it. We're going to have to beef up our training. We're going to, for example, I had some questions about technology earlier this week because I'm not good at it. I picked up the phone and called 2 of our guys, and of course, if you want to learn technology, go to Paul Sandoval and his company because he does a wonderful job. But funding is going to be a trouble. And so we're going to have to find a way to maneuver around or climb over rehab obstacles while at the same time lobbying for full funding, which is going to be tough. It's going to be hard now because they're going to be looking for every place to cut. And if they can cut it out of people with disabilities support system, that's one of the places that'll be hit. So we're going to have to be really vigilant. Thank you for that. I think you're absolutely right. Train ourselves, man. Train ourselves. What else we have, Kev?
Phone number ending in 9661.
9661. Who's this?
This is Tom Anderson.
Hey, Tom Anderson, everybody. What are you worried about in
Right,
You're retired.
Well, I keep busy. I'm not, just because I'm retired. I'm keeping myself busy in a number of ways. But I want to say that we in the Federation have the will, the determination, the faith, the confidence to overcome any obstacle that we come against. We just have to look at our track record. There's a time back in the 90s, when we switched from DOS to, Windows operating system. Folks thought, oh my goodness, how is this going to work? Well, we found a way to make it work, and we found a way on various obstacles that we've overcome. We've faced those giants and overcome those giants, and we will. And those who are determined will find a way to get the employment that is needed. And because we have the flexibility, we have the determination, and we have the wisdom collectively to make the changes that we will make. Because blindness is not the characteristics that holds us back.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it any better, Tom. I agree. That's why we have these discussions, to figure out how are we going to harness that imagination, determination, will. What are the steps, the procedures? What can we do collectively to build the employment future, the society that we want? Thanks, Toasty.
Phone number, 5829.
5829, who's this?
Yes, this is Peter Alsher from Columbia, Missouri. And I want to say up front that I am not a member of the National Federation of the Blind, but I am very grateful that you're having this conversation about employment, because I think it's really important. And I'm also grateful for the fact that you're thinking a little bit outside of the box. I'm sort of tired of people who aren't reading the trade journals about this stuff. What's Forbes saying? What's Fast Company saying? What strategies are they encouraging? We need to do more of that, I think, as a blindness community. The main point I wanted to make is I think we as a blindness community are going to have to do two things, and they're both a bit contradictory. The first is we're going to have to work with coalitions more effectively than we have in the past. I'm thinking about the work I did a while back, working with college students with disabilities to improve the employment opportunities. And we worked with universities and corporate folks and Voc Rehab and the students themselves to form alliances so that things could get done to prepare both the employers and the students for employment. Mm-hmm. And I think we're going to do more of that. And I know that you guys have a roster of employers that you work with. I think what we're going to have to do is to say to these employers, okay, what do you need from us? What are you looking for in hires? How are things changing? What are you doing? How can we work together? I think those alliances are going to be critical. I know that other minority groups are doing the same kinds of things. Maybe we work with them as well. But I think this alliances and building coalitions is going to be really, really important. The other thing, and I never thought I would say this in my entire life as one who's worked mostly outside of the disability arena, is I think we're going to take another look at National Industries for the Blind, which I know is a controversial topic. But, maybe we're going to have to relook at the way, look at what opportunities they're looking at, and how can we work with them to improve the way they do business. How can are we going to have to some degree segregate ourselves again? I hate that word, but maybe we're going to have to think about that a little more carefully than we have in the past. It's been sort of nah, we can't do that. I don't want to segregate myself any more than anybody else does. But, maybe we're going to have to think about that, be more entrepreneurial, as other folks said. And the third.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I wouldn't want to put it segregate ourselves. We have talked a little about cottage industries or co-ops where maybe some blind people start a bakery, but I don't mind if 2 or 3 blind people get together and start a bakery and make a whole lot of money. Nobody says if 2 or 3 sighted people get together and start a bakery and make a lot of money. Nobody says sighted people are segregating themselves. So I take your point. I would say that we have worked pretty collaboratively with National Industries for the Blind that you may not know. But it doesn't help when Ability One goes out and secretly bids contracts with the American Foundation for the Blind, which has been a trouble. In terms of coalitions, absolutely we need to be stronger. And the National Federation of the Blind, I'll be real honest with you, 30 years ago, we kind of went alone and we did well. We were the pioneers. There wouldn't be a lot of the civil rights that all people with disabilities are able to enjoy if we hadn't broken ground. Some of the Social Security legislation, minimum wage, all of that is our leadership. But what we've been able to do, as you've suggested, in recent years is coalesce with like-minded organizations. And heck, man, the most recent piece of legislation that we worked on with regard to minimum wage, I think we had 75 or 80 organizations of people with disabilities in league with us. So I think we are marshaling, but to do a better job, certainly, absolutely. Thank you, Mike. You're welcome to join our chapter there, I'm sure. The Wonders do a hell of a job for us in Columbia. Thanks for joining us. We appreciate it. Who's next, Kev?
Debbie's iPhone.
Hey, Debbie's iPhone.
You can unmute Debbie.
Hi, Debbie.
Oh, there she is.
Sorry about that. I was having a little struggle there.
There you go. Come on in, Deb. How are you?
I'm great. I'm great, and hope all of my Federation family in Colorado is as well.
We're rocking.
Tom Anderson in Kansas.
There you go.
I think that you're absolutely right in that we are going to have a need to step up our training to improve our computer training at our centers, all of them, and even from our own homes by hiring people. But I think, and I'm lucky to live in a state that our state agency is pretty good in, helping blind guys. But I think that we need to take I think we need to take a look also at more blue collar work, that we need to figure out what are the things that we can do outside of the box, because everybody isn't, isn't going to go to college, isn't going to finish that degree. And there's so much more out there that we could be doing if we would just look at it. And like you said, maybe the bakery, whatever. I think that's a great idea. And I'd also like to invite Peter Altschul to come to our chapter meeting tomorrow here in Columbia. It is at 1:30. It is a virtual meeting tomorrow. But if you would like to call us at 874-1774, we can make sure that you have that number, and glad to see you on an NFB call tonight. Welcome.
Yeah, absolutely. Deb, before you go, Kev, keep remembering, do you have ideas about, you say blue collar, and some of us said, manufacturing and maybe even some restaurant work, and some of us are going to go away. Those are the things you think about in blue collar. Do you have thoughts at all? I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I love what you're saying. Thoughts about the kind of blue collar jobs that will continue out there? Construction. Well, I don't know too many blind people who are going to be doing construction, but does that mean I'm selling a short?
No, I think that probably you're right. I mean, there is that one blind guy, that is great.
Yeah.
It's not me. But I think that there are things that maybe, I haven't been able to look at or think of myself because it's not my area. But I think that, I think the restaurant business that you were mentioning, I don't think that's it. I think, they've mentioned personal trainers, that is a great thing. Somebody's also going to need to be doing the daycare for the people who are working from home virtually.
Yeah, that's right. Wow. That's good. And you're right in line with Dr. Maurer, by the way. When we sit in these couple of committees, he's like, well, blue collar, we got to talk about how we can still, maybe blind people take over more, build the machines that build the machines that build the machines. So
yeah, I don't know, Kevin, if you ever remember, I know you've seen it, but there was a chair at the that Dr. Jernigan made out of spools, wooden spools.
Yeah. Oh,
and it was an absolutely beautiful piece of furniture. So I don't really want to make brooms, but I sure wish I did know how to cane a chair or to do some woodworking.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely, and that's the kind of thing Jessica and I have been playing around with, just ideas, just brainstorming. for 4 or 5 years. You know, we've got a Colorado Center for, and Julie Deaton, we've talked about it. We've got a Colorado Center for the Blind. We've got some space. Maybe we do start launching some co-op or entrepreneurial cottage industries on our own. And that's something local chapters could look into as well. Great comments, y'all. We're coming close to the end, but who else do we might have, Kev?
We have Jim Gasso. You can unmute, Jim.
Jim, you're back. Thanks for coming in again, brother. Jim's looking for the mute.
Okay, no, I think, yeah. Can you hear me now?
We can. Go right ahead, my man.
Yeah, I'm using an Android phone here for the moment, preparing for something else, so all the buttons aren't where you might expect them. So anyway, I had to duck out for a little bit, but these points may have been covered. My first point, I think, would be, were I in the business of wanting to enter the job market again and spend a lot of years at doing work, I think I would be looking at communications technology. It's going to be a big area. I don't mean for blind people, it's just going to be a big area.
Yeah.
You knew it was going to be anyway. All you have to do is read books of the future, and everybody's communicating remotely. And we're headed that way. And this pandemic thing is going to drive it more.
Yep.
And there are going to be, I wish I'd invested in Zoom. I mean, everybody's using it, but it's not just Zoom. They're using all kinds of various communication tools. So I think I would be looking at that area. Now, the other point I wanted to make, which I'm sure was covered, but I'd like to say it from the personal end. I know when I started out looking for work, and this was back in the 1960s, and I started out thinking about going to school and then work, but I met with my rehab counselor, and her question to me was, well, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? She didn't say, what, you're a blind guy. What are you going to do? She didn't even suggest that was a factor. And so I'd like to be having this discussion in terms of what's your job choice without regard to the fact that you're blind. Now, blindness figures in as much as it does. I'm not going to be a baseball pitcher. And only one reason is that I'm blind, and there's other reasons. I'm way old, and I don't have a strong enough arm for it, and I can factor in all kinds of other reasons. But so I don't think we should be thinking about the future in terms of what kind of jobs can blind people do. And I'm not suggesting that this conversation is doing that, but I wanted to point out to everybody, let's just think of what kind of jobs are going to be around that we can make a whole lot of money at.
Yeah. I agree. And I appreciate the refocus, because we do, my intent is to figure out, and our group intent is figure out, what are the next important jobs, communication platforms, as you say, whether it's cottage industries, whatever it is, what are the big jobs of the future, regardless of blindness, and then we'll tackle how we make sure we get there. I think I appreciate the refocus or the reorientation. And it's always good to have you on the calls, Jim. John Pere, your buddy, was here yesterday with our interview with Mike May. That was really fun.
Yeah. Okay, good. That's great.
Thanks. Jessica?
With all due respect, I would differ in opinion with that just a little bit. And
Okay.
just to say that we've been focusing on how we can make all jobs accessible for blind people for the last many, many years, and we still have a 50% or greater unemployment rate. So I wonder if this isn't a good time to focus on some jobs that blind people can do so that we can really put people to work.
Mm-hmm. Then that's a good point too. So in other words, what you're kind of saying is let's construct some jobs from the get-go.
Right.
That blind, yeah.
And
Well,
that's why I think some of those might come out of our training centers. You know, that doesn't mean blind people still can't do any jobs that we want to do and that we
Right.
shouldn't be
Right.
trying to look at what those look like.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe we have some ways that we funnel blind people into some jobs so that we can get the vast majority of us working.
You know, and that's a good point because we've spent a lot of time in the National Federation of the Blind, and part of our philosophy is, you know, we can do the average job in the average place of business with good training and some opportunity, as well as, or in some case, better than sighted people. Well, and we ought to maintain that focus. On the other hand, you know, what has that done for us lately in terms of significantly lowering our unemployment rate? Clearly, without that mentality, the employment rate would be higher. And yet, have we really succeeded in getting that unemployment rate down to, you know, 18%, 20%, 30%? No. So probably, Jess, you're right, and Jim Gaschel's right. A multi-plan approach. Do a couple more, Kevin. We'll be at the end of the week, I think, if we have folks. I've learned from you guys, and I thank you. I know I come to this with a great number of opinions and thoughts, and you guys have been great. Who else do we have, Kev?
Lisa Hickson.
Oh, hi, Lisa. Come on in.
Hi.
Hi.
It's great to be here. I'm from Antigua in the Caribbean.
Wonderful.
Yeah, I attended the NFB convention in 2011 and I'm still on the mailing list. So
Wonderful.
I saw the meeting tonight and decided to join. I appreciate the discussion because it's a discussion that we need to have about what the future looks like for us, or how can we participate in the future that lies ahead. And I have been motivated just by listening to pursue my MBA in IT, because I think IT would be a great part of what the new future looks like.
Yep.
And not necessarily needing to be in an office to get the IT job done. Like the person who said it earlier, I haven't missed going out either and just being around sighted people and the discrimination and the nonsense that takes place. I've been very happy just to be at home and be able to get stuff done from home. Yeah. So I really appreciate this discussion, and it just caused me to think too, even about other businesses that, and you know, Presence for Blind coming together, perhaps start a little bakery or start some business that could generate an income. The information put out this evening has really been helpful, very thoughtful, very helpful, and I'm just glad to be a part of the discussion.
We're glad you came in to join, and gosh, stay warm down there. Well, thank you very much for your comments. And, you know, I know that a lot of people will be happy when this doggone thing is let up a bit and they can get out there and tackle the world outside of our isolation. Kev, do we have maybe one other call before we try to end on time, but we're a few minutes late, but that's okay.
All right, we'll go last one, Marianne.
Marianne.
You can unmute or accept the unmute. There you go.
I just unmuted. Thank you so much. To a couple of different points. To the lady who was speaking to education and what we shouldn't do or why it isn't our problem and so on. I'd say it may not be my problem to educate the world, but if I want the job, I better educate somebody. Second point, it's really not a fear of blindness so much as, and I address this with pretty much any employment interview I go to, you can't judge me by the premise, if you close your eyes, how are you going to do the job? Because that's what sighted people think when you're interviewing with them. Oh my God, if I was blind tomorrow, I couldn't do that job. Therefore, the blind person can't do that job either. So we have to be able to educate and talk about the training we have to do the jobs that we are actually out there wanting to do.
Sure.
And I think one of the things that we need to look at is more stuff like Blind Institute of Technology are doing, where basically he is training people to do coding jobs and programming and different kinds of things where maybe they're working through him, maybe they're working directly for a company, but they're providing kind of the backdoor technology to things. And I think one of the things we need to focus on for real is what is not out there that we are in a position to provide. As Jessica said, create the jobs that we can do, but what's the thing that's not out there? What's the thing that the world needs? I mean, who knew that the world needed Zoom? There's plenty of things out there, or there's plenty of things that we have not even imagined yet.
Yeah.
That if we can convince the world that it needs it, we're going to be the pioneers of whatever that is.
Yeah,
and I remember us talking about that several years ago at a Colorado board retreat, and the idea of using centers and things like that to come up with what is that thing. Yeah. And I think that's part of what we really need to start looking at as an organization. What can we provide that the world doesn't even know that needs yet?
Yeah, or that they already know they need. For example, some blind guy says, I know how to distill whiskey. I would say, hey, whiskey distillery. So there's all kinds of things. We just need to dream it up. The only other point I would say, Marianne, is I think part of what she was expressing was a frustration about having to educate. I know.
Oh, absolutely. I feel it every time I go into an interview.
But I agree with that. And I think that was not that she wouldn't, because we have to, but that she doesn't feel like she has to walk around every day with a banner that explains blindness and what it is. And I think we all go through various phases about that. You guys, this was great. I hope we got pretty much everybody in.
Before we go, Kev, will you repeat who the World Without Work?
World Without Work is by Daniel Susskind. Daniel Susskind. It may be on Bard. It is on Audible, and I think it's on Bard because I don't know where Dr. Maurer read it. This man has written a number of these, but kind of like Ray. He's a thinker, inventor, kind of a Raymond Kurzweil, or some of these really philosopher tech people that I really enjoy reading. And we look forward to communicating about this and other topics. Assistance at NFBCO. Hope you'll sign up for our listserv. Hope you'll catch some of the great activities that you heard about over the weekend. And we will talk with many of you on Tuesday evening, where we will talk about the work of our governmental affairs in Washington, D.C. Thank you all, and good night from the bunker.